Okay, hey everyone. My name is Adam Holtby, Principal Analyst here at Omdia, and I am joined by my colleague Tim Banting. Tim, thanks for hopping on today. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good here. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, looking forward to talking to you about the future work survey and our findings. Certainly gained a lot of interest.
Yeah, this is quite an exciting time of year for our team, right, Tim? This is like Christmas for the digital workplace team when we get the future of work survey data back. This is the third iteration of this survey, and we kind of developed it this year with some new questions. So really excited to kind of share some of the highlights with you on the call today. I guess a good place to start is to really kind of advise on what the survey is. So the objective with the survey and the study is really to understand how business leaders feel that work is transforming and what their future of work strategic initiatives and priorities are going to be going forward. So what it is that they're prioritizing strategically, and also to try and explore and understand what organizations' tech priorities are going to be going forward too. So what it is that they're trying to achieve, what are some of the technologies and services and the partnership capabilities that they're looking towards to help them in achieving those objectives. We spoke to around 450 C-level executives across not just IT, but also HR and finance departments across the globe in deriving these insights. And there's some really interesting information, some of which we're going to get into now and introduce you to now. So the first one is really kind of around work styles, right? And I think it's probably no surprise to anybody to learn that work styles have evolved. They continue to evolve. And this question was really to kind of help us understand what it is that organizations are planning over the long term, when it comes to those work style changes and those work style evolutions. And as we can see, hybrid has very much become the new headquarters for organizations. It's just under half of the workforce that are going to be working in either a hybrid or truly mobile fashion going forward. So that mobile centric nature to work is absolutely taking off. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing, right, Tim?
Definitely, and I think it's important to point out here that this isn't a fad. You know, we've had 3 years since. Well, are we nearly 3 years? It feels like 3 years, perhaps even
Yeah.
longer since
Feels
the
that, yeah,
pandemic.
feels like longer than 3 years.
Yeah, but I think what we found is these habits are long term. It's not just a fad. It's not just, oh, we'll all go remote and then we'll go back into the office. We've seen there's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of people that are really reassessing their real estate needs. And I think in the survey we sort of uncovered a lot of stuff. There seems to be moves towards activity-based working. There's certainly a lot of reimagining what we need to do to be successful and productive. And I think we also are looking at location as a means of sort of harnessing that productivity, because we need to be productive regardless of our location and because of our location. So I think
Yeah,
that
you're
we've seen
right.
a big shift.
That's kind of one of the common, I think, misconceptions when it comes to hybrid work, right? Is thinking about it just purely with that location hat on, thinking this is just about a place where people work, as opposed to thinking a more accurate way to think about hybrid is to think about how work is transforming around that. And what businesses should be doing is really creating infrastructures that are more mobile centric and that, to your point, enable people, empower people, secure people to work from any location, whether they choose to go into the office, whether they choose to work from a coffee shop, whether they choose to work from home. So I think regardless of which work style is kind of dominant within your organization, because not everybody will be able to work in a hybrid fashion, of course, there's still those investments that need to be made from an infrastructure perspective to ensure that these things can be managed, that these work styles can be secured in a really uniform fashion, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're hearing about this. You mentioned the word parity. We're hearing about equitable meeting experiences. So the whole idea is in unified communications that if you're in a conference, you have the same meeting experience remotely as you would do in the office. Now, there's part of me that wants to have a better experience when I'm in the office, because otherwise I might as well sit at my desk and just dial in remotely. But typically in an office, you've got that sort of bowling alley view where you've got people all the way down the sides of the desk. Very difficult to hear people speak, very difficult to understand who's speaking.
Yeah.
So I want a better experience when I'm in the office. I don't want to have meeting equity. So these are all sorts of things that organizations need to think about.
Yeah, and I think that goes just beyond meetings too, right? In terms of the office is this place that contributes towards optimizing employee experiences, right? And the experience that someone has in an office. And to your point, I don't think people want to come into an office anymore and work in the same way that they did or indeed still do when they're working from home, right? They do want different experiences in the office to encourage them into the office, but also to support new ways and more collaborative ways of working. So
Well,
you mentioned that.
definitely, and it also takes a lot of coordination because you live about a few hundred miles away from me, Adam. If we both decide that we're going to move into or we're going to meet up in London, we need to work out where we're going to sit. There's
Yeah.
some offices don't even have that ability to book open plan desks next to each other, or it takes an awful lot of coordination. You need to know where the office is laid out. It's no good going into an office and being on opposite sides of the building. What's the point? You might as well meet over the internet and converse like we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So my view is when we talk kind of parity of experience, it's on the understanding that we're trying to deliver the best experience possible relevant to the environment that an employee or an individual is working in, right? And that will look different in an office to what it will from home, but the experience still needs to be good and a positive one.
Yeah, or different from a nurse's station, or different from a frontline worker, or different from a contact center agent, or it's just different. And I think IT departments and business professionals need to sort of survey their employees and understand what they need to be productive rather than decreeing, well, what you get is the very lousy webcam in your laptop and a very tinny pair of speakers and a second-rate microphone in order to portray a professional image when you're speaking to clients.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That kind of ties in well to another question that we asked as part of the survey this year, which was really one around what are the key challenges that organizations have experienced when it comes to hybrid work, and I guess in improving and optimizing employee support along these hybrid work styles. What are the big challenges? What are the big roadblocks that organizations have experienced? And I think here is pretty telling, right? In terms of it's not just the technology issues, those technology support issues that organizations are struggling with that have been well documented, but also improving areas like employee well-being and employee experience have become really key challenges that organizations need support in overcoming too, right? And that isn't just something that can be solved with technology. It requires new ways of managing employees, new ways of understanding employees. So I think it's interesting that we've got kind of those technology-led challenges, but also maybe those more sentiment-based issues that organizations are really struggling with. And I think in terms of a solution around some of these challenges and some of these issues, and I think we've already kind of touched on it, Tim, is the importance of having cross-functional approaches to really kind of overcoming these issues. So these aren't just challenges that IT can help organizations overcome. IT needs to work closely with facilities management, for example, in terms of what we were discussing a few seconds ago on redefining the physical workplace and the physical office environment. IT needs to work closely with HR departments in terms of improving things like employee experience. So I guess a way to navigate these challenges and a way for organizations to overcome them is to not approach them in a siloed fashion. Make sure that there is that strong integration between different business units and at that process and workflow level too, right? That's really important.
Definitely. I think the workflow part of it is often overlooked. It's just, well, there's the technology, get on with it. There's a lot of productivity that can be improved through workflow automation. There's sort of things like how you onboard employees or offboard employees, or how you deal with any potential IT problems, or how you deal with approvals, for example, or vacation or holiday time. Those sorts of things can all be automated and exist and coincide alongside all sorts of different types of technology to make life so much easier for people.
And another one, as you can see, number 5 here, I think understanding and being able to measure productivity. I'm seeing that a lot in terms of a really renewed focus on that now. I think as the workforce has become more geographically dispersed, there is this priority, this objective for organizations to better understand what employees are doing, not necessarily kind of through that big brother viewpoint, right? But I think just more in coordinating the tasks and activities that people are doing and making sure that their time is kind of being maximized and that they're able to work as productive as they possibly can. And I think that ties into the whole need around employee experience too, right? If you're delivering great employee experiences, then you're kind of creating this environment where employees can work more productively.
Definitely, it's an interesting one as well, because there's the cynic in me sort of says, well, how do we measure productivity when we're in the office? And it
Yeah.
was usually how much time your backside was on the office chair as opposed to output.
Yeah, and I think on the subject of employee productivity in particular, and this relates to another question that we asked as part of this year's survey, was really kind of how organizations felt that things like employee productivity, that areas like communication and collaboration and company culture, how respondents felt that these things had been impacted with the move to hybrid working. And around half feel that these areas kind of improved, with the other half split between believing that things like employee productivity and communication and collaboration had either stayed the same or worsened. So again, there's still work to do, I think, in understanding these type of elements, especially things like employee productivity, because it can be a difficult thing to kind of measure and manage. But I think encouraging to see that, by and large, the majority of respondents that we spoke to really felt that these areas had improved with the move to more mobile-centric and remote work styles. You seeing something kind of similar in the conversations you're having?
Yeah, definitely. What I find interesting is that this has just become topical as a result of COVID-19, really. So we didn't really look at any of this prior to the sort of great experimentation, as I call it now. You know, it's a great opportunity for people to reimagine and reinvent the way that they work, and for the benefit of both the employer and the employee. So there's still a lot of work to be done here, but it's really encouraging that people are seeing that things have improved, or at least we're measuring this now, so we can see that it is improving or has improved, and at least if we know that things aren't going in the right direction, we can take steps to certainly take steps to improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned kind of at the top of this presentation that in addition to kind of some of these strategic, more people-centric elements and questions, some of which we've already explored, we also, in this Future of Work survey, like to explore some of the technology priorities that organizations have. So in understanding what their challenges are, we really want to try and understand, okay, what type of capabilities and services are they mapping to help them in overcoming those challenges? So there's two things that this slide in particular is showing us specific to those kind of technological capabilities that businesses are prioritizing. On the left, we can see the top 5 most commonly adopted digital workplace technical capabilities at present. So we've got mobility and communications and collaboration capability kind of reigning supreme there, which is perhaps no surprise because digital workplace ecosystems are really built on top of those mobility management and unified communications and collaboration investments that organizations make. But on the right, we can see the new capabilities that organizations are planning investment in over the course of the next 24 months. So any technological capabilities that can help strengthen zero trust security approaches are going to be important, as is automation and self-service capabilities for businesses going forward. Those features are going to be really vital for organizations.
Definitely. I guess pre-pandemic, there were some departments in particular, if I think maybe finance accounts, where they did, you went into the office, and because it was sensitive data, same with HR, there was this understanding that once you're inside the physical constraints of the 4 walls of the business, then it's secure. But of course, you need to be able to work and access remotely in a secure fashion. So we've seen this big move away from keeping data siloed within a customer's data center and being able to access that in a secure method and encrypted in some of those public cloud services. So there seems to be this emphasis away from retaining data and servers and infrastructure on-premise or on premises, and leveraging through public cloud services, things like file storage, productivity applications, and pretty much everything is software as a service now.
Yeah, it's a good point, because obviously we've spoken around how people are increasingly moving away from, or doing more work, shall we say, away from the traditional office perimeter. And that is the same for security, right? Security practices. It's not just built around that kind of office-based work style anymore. It needs to be more conditional. And I think that is absolutely driving a lot of interest in those zero trust capabilities.
And thankfully, from the end user perspective, it's getting easier. I remember in the dim and distant past where you had very esoteric VPNs that you had to fire up, or you used to have these special cards that you had to type in a PIN number to get authentication onto the system.
Once you're in with those capabilities, right? And things are different now, where it's a more conditional, constant approach to security, where access is constantly being challenged.
And thankfully, a lot easier.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point, though, in terms of that balance between employee experience and ensuring that organizations are kind of operating in a secure fashion. And that's something to really call out, because that is, I know from a security perspective, that's always been a mandate that's important, but even more so now. And we kind of touched on automation and self-service briefly, but I think those are two really important call-outs too, especially around things like self-service. Again, not I'd say an especially radically new technology or capability, but as we looked earlier on, with things like employee support being such a challenge, I think self-service is one of those capabilities that organizations are looking towards to help them in overcoming that challenge and in making employee support a lot better for people.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly takes the emphasis away from the IT help desk. And I mean, they were beleaguered enough during the pandemic, but if you can free up resources to where it really matters, rather than asking help desk calls and have you tried switching it on and off again, or using Google as your own internal help desk. I mean, if it can all be automated, if it can all be self-service, then it makes life so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So a big section in the Future of Work survey this year is around kind of exploring those technical capabilities in a little bit more detail. So definitely reach out if you want more information on that. But another kind of key pillar component of the survey, and this is kind of the last slide that we'll touch on today, is once we kind of understand strategically what organizations are prioritizing and what some of those more people-centric focuses and objectives are, once we've kind of looked at, okay, these are the type of technical capabilities that organizations are looking towards to help them in overcoming those challenges, we also wanted to explore what it is that organizations expect from their technology vendor and service provider partners. So we understand the technology, we understand those people-centric elements. How are the digital partnerships that you have in place? How are they looking, and how could they potentially be improved? And what do you feel is kind of going well with those partnerships? And this question kind of points to that. The headline really from the digital partner section of the survey is really that 73% of organizations indicated to us that they're reconsidering the existing digital partnerships that they have in place. 73%. I mean, that's massive, right, Tim, in terms of organizations that are exploring new partnerships.
It is huge. I guess there's a lot of changes going on with channel partners, communication service providers, all of those systems integrators as well. And they're having to reinvent themselves and look at ways in which they can add value to the whole design, implementation, optimization, and management of all of this infrastructure. And of course, they are the people that have got that intellectual property and experience with these significant changes that their clients are asking them to help them with. So there's a whole reimagination of the services capability, perhaps some intellectual property or additional software and applications that these partners can provide to help this onboarding process and help managing the whole process and the whole orchestration around some of these technological changes that need to be taking place.
Yeah, because when we talk about end user computing, when we talk about enterprise communications, when we talk about employee support, automation, all of these areas that are pillar areas of part of this digital workplace ecosystem that we talk a lot about here at Omdia, there's obviously a lot of complexities in kind of maturing the way that these different types of capabilities are currently utilized by organizations. Obviously, in terms of adopting new capabilities, there's a lot of complexities. And digital partners, service providers in particular, are going to be a really important companion for organizations on the path to the future of work, so to speak, in helping them navigate some of those complexities, in helping them integrate those different capabilities, and in building on top of those kind of foundational digital workplace components, things like new reporting and analytics capabilities, things like workflow digitization and automation capabilities. It's going to be interesting, I think, to see who the partner of choice really kind of emerges in being for organizations here, who it is that organizations are going to really look to first towards being that key digital workplace partner. The survey data at the minute points towards businesses looking very much at kind of technology vendors, the likes of Microsoft, the likes of Google, being those digital workplace partners of choice at present. But the opportunity for service providers in particular to join those different pieces together, to join the dots, so to speak, and to build on top of those capabilities services that can support organizations in realizing value from them, the opportunity there is huge. This slide, by the way, it shows us the 73% of respondents that advised that they were looking at new partnerships. We asked them, okay, what's wrong with your existing partnerships, essentially? And this slide shows us the top 5 responses there. So we've got things, the usual suspects, like the performance of a solution was lower than expectations, which is causing people to look elsewhere. Inflexibility in terms of contract arrangements, so a more financially driven metric there. But I think number 3 is really interesting here, right? This was nowhere near the top 5 last year, but this year, concerns over a digital partner's kind of ESG agenda, what they're doing in terms of their environmental and social agenda. That is something that organizations are paying a lot more attention to when it comes to choosing their next digital partner. So I think this is a really good steer in terms of what it is that partners need to focus on, in terms of not just better serving their existing customers, but also in how they can better appeal to a new segment of customers that are exploring these digital workplace objectives and priorities.
Definitely. I found ESG an interesting one because I've noticed that there's a number of customers. If you're in B2C, there's a number of customers there that are making very deliberate choices based on ESG policies of corporations. So we're going to see this coming up the agenda in a big way, I think. There's going to be a renewed focus on ESG, and also helping, rather than just greenwashing your organization with all sorts of marketing campaigns, if you can show where you are leading an ESG initiative with some hard facts and figures, and show that you're making these decisive choices to lead in ESG, I think that's not only going to attract customers, it's going to attract talent, and it's certainly going to pay off in terms of revenue as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just kind of a few questions that we wanted to kind of cover and provide some insights around. It's been a really kind of constructive and valuable piece of work for us this year, especially because we have explored in a little bit more detail elements like ESG, like employee experience, not just in that last question that we ran through, but in other questions throughout the survey too. So if you do want to learn more about the future of work study and survey, if you want to kind of unravel and look at some of the other questions that we asked and some of the other data points that we've got, absolutely get in touch, because it's a really useful piece of work for us in terms of the whole digital workplace team here at Omdia. And we are developing a series of insights reports off the back of this that will be published to the Omdia website too. Tim, I want to kind of thank you for hopping on the call today. It was a really good discussion. I'm really excited about this stuff. I know that you are too, and I'm sure we'll be chatting a lot more about it over the next few weeks and months for sure.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Adam, and well done on this great piece of research, and look forward to working with you on your workplace transformation intelligence service.
Excellent. Perfect. Thanks, everyone.